In the serene hills of New Hampshire, surrounded by glassy lakes and whispering trees, stood a mansion of stone and silence. Inside it lived Graham Whitaker, 47, a tech tycoon whose name echoed across Wall Street, but whose soul hadn't spoken in years. 5 years ago, he lost his wife, Eliza, in a tragic car crash. Since then, he had buried himself in boardrooms, contracts, and cold, empty routines. His mansion was spotless, but joyless. His staff came and went, and his only daughter, Sophie, now 8, lived a quiet, colorless childhood full of nannies and tutors, but no warmth. Graham swore he'd never love again. That chapter, he believed, was sealed with Eliza's coffin. One rainy morning, Graham's luxury car blew a tire outside a small-town diner. Drenched and frustrated, he stepped inside Maggie's Diner, a cozy place scented with cinnamon, bacon, and burnt coffee. There, behind the counter, stood Josie Fields, 29, an ordinary waitress with an extraordinary heart. She offered him a warm towel and coffee on the house. He refused, coldly. She smiled anyway. He never meant to return, but fate had other plans. Days later, when Sophie refused to eat again, Graham, desperate to cheer her up, took her to that same diner. Josie instantly remembered them, but instead of offering coffee, she knelt beside Sophie and said, "Want to help me frost a cupcake?" For the first time in months, Sophie smiled. Soon, Thursdays became sacred. Every week, Graham brought Sophie to the diner. Josie always had a new activity ready: cupcake decorating, crayon puzzles, even stories about a fairy named Jellybean, who reminded Sophie of herself. Sophie laughed again. She opened up, started drawing, started hugging Josie. And Graham, he watched, quietly, curiously, cautiously. Josie never asked about his business or his money. She treated Sophie like a child, not like a billionaire's heir. And for Graham, who lived in a world of people who wanted something, Josie was different. One evening, after Sophie fell asleep in a diner booth, Josie draped a blanket over her and whispered, "She's a strong little soul, but she needs softness." Graham's heart ached for his daughter, for the years he lost, for the warmth he didn't know he was missing. But shadows always follow light. Graham's business partner, Miles Carter, caught wind of Josie. When he saw her attending a charity event beside Graham, he laughed. "You're seriously dating a diner girl? She's probably just after your money." Josie heard. She left that night without saying goodbye. Sophie cried for hours. When Graham found her the next day, she was back at the diner, cleaning tables with tears in her eyes. "I don't belong in your world," she whispered. "Your life is marble. Mine is linoleum." "You belong with us," he replied. "You're the only one who sees us for who we really are." They held each other in silence, two broken hearts beginning to heal. One snowy evening, while watching Sophie draw by the fireplace, Josie finally opened up. She'd grown up in the foster system. Her mother had died young. She never knew her father. She had dropped out of college to care for her ailing grandmother. Waitressing was never her dream, but it kept her going. "I used to want to be a teacher," she said softly. "You already are," Graham replied. "You've taught my daughter how to smile again." One Sunday, Graham did something he'd never done. He skipped a board meeting to cook breakfast. Josie made pancakes. Sophie added sprinkles. The mansion echoed with laughter for the first time in 5 years. Then, Graham handed Josie a sketchbook Sophie had filled, drawings of the three of them holding hands under a rainbow. On the last page, Sophie had written, "Can Josie be my real mom now?" Tears rolled down Josie's cheeks. Graham knelt, not with a diamond ring, but with that sketchbook. "We don't need labels, we just need love. Will you stay? With us?" Josie nodded, crying into his chest. And just like that, without a ring, without champagne, without fireworks, a family was born. But love, especially when it's pure, is often tested. A paparazzi photo surfaced of Josie holding Sophie's hand at a fundraiser. The headline read, "From Pancakes to Prada. Waitress bags billionaire." The internet exploded. Gossip channels called her a gold digger. Comment sections became venomous. Josie was humiliated, Sophie was bullied, and Graham, he was furious. One morning, Josie quietly packed a bag. "I won't let them hurt your daughter because of me," she said, tears falling. But Sophie came running, clutching a drawing of Josie with angel wings. "You're my mom," she whispered. That day, Graham called a press conference, not to defend Josie, but to honor her. He publicly announced the creation of the Eliza Josie Foundation to support foster children and single parents. Love doesn't look at bank accounts, he said. It looks at hearts. The world listened and softened. Instead of retreating, Josie leaned into her dream. With Graham's support and her own fierce determination, she finished her teaching degree online. The diner owner, Maggie, made her co-owner. She started weekend art workshops for children who needed safe places to express themselves. Sophie became her assistant, proudly wearing an apron that read, "Little Teacher." Every child who walked in saw not just a rich man's wife, but a woman who had once walked in their shoes. On the anniversary of Eliza's passing, the family sat by the lake. Josie brought 3 lanterns and paper. They each wrote letters to Eliza. Sophie's letter read, "Thank you for giving me life, and thank you for sending Josie." Graham's letter simply said, "You told me to love again when I was ready. I am." They lit the lanterns and watched them rise into the sky. 3 lights for 3 souls, tied forever by love. Years passed. Josie became a beloved elementary teacher. Sophie grew into a brave, creative young woman. The mansion was no longer a museum of grief. It was a living home filled with art, music, burnt cookies, family hugs, and bedtime stories. Every Saturday, Graham closed his laptop and read aloud by the fireplace. Josie made hot cocoa. Sophie sat between them, sketching their lives into fairy tales. Because sometimes, the most magical stories start with heartbreak. She was never trying to replace my mother. She just reminded my father how to feel. She reminded me how to be a kid. And somewhere in between, we built a home out of second chances.